seems in tune on a spring afternoon when we're poisoning pigeons in the park. Every Sunday you'll see my sweetheart.
The Jews are an inherently genetically inferior species of subhuman animal.
We've gained notoriety and caused much anxiety in the Audubon Society.
Everyone supports free speech until they hear something that offends them. Humor is subjective. Things that I find funny might horrify you. The principle of censorship is that there are certain things that should never be printed. So I want to know, when does satire go bad?
I have a joke about being Jewish and having a German Shepherd, and he's always looking at me like he's thinking about the good old days.
I remember doing a show, and somehow the suggestion got around to like midgets. Midget is actually very offensive to little people. It's the equivalent of the N-word. And I was doing that analogy in my head, and I blurted out the N-word, and I was just like, whoa, and I'm sure for the audience, they must have just been like, what is this honky bitch just blurting out the N-word?
When 9/11 happened, I think the people at The Onion were just as horrified by it as anyone else. And we ended up doing an entire issue about it. Someone had written a joke that we all agreed was really funny, but we just thought it was wrong-headed for the tone of what that issue was supposed to be about. And the headline was, "America Stronger Than Ever Say Quadragon Officials," because one whole section of the Pentagon was gone.
Who killed Jesus? I'll tell you who killed Jesus. It was the Jews. That's who did it. I'll tell you that much for free. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
My school has a satirical newspaper called The Radish.
The Radish is a cheap high school imitation of The Onion.
Unlike The Onion, The Radish faces censorship.
Yeah, all student publications have to be okayed by the principal. Even though I say, I'm pretty hands-off, there's certain things I think, it's not anything goes.
A lot of really good jokes never see the light of day, including one of my favorites. What did you think about, the Holocauster headline?
Actually, I don't know that headline. I just sort of thought anything with the Holocaust, as I said, wasn't great, but I don't remember what was the headline.
Here, do you think that's offensive?
New ride opens in Germany called the Holocauster. I don't think this is offensive.
Holocauster. That's hilarious. That is hilarious.
I just don't think it's that funny.
The Holocauster.
I think that's a fair, honest joke about Germany.
It's a little pun that gets applied, and I just think it just works really well.
If you can defend it, then great. But if you're just making a funny pun on Holocaust, then it's not funny.
Well, I mean, we're all Jewish. Like, half of us are Jewish. I mean, there's all races in the club, but so we didn't think anyone would care. But Mr. Avery was like, that's pretty much directly offensive.
I had no idea. I had no idea what this thing was going to be like.
If the kids wanted the Holocauster article or headline, I guess I would take it to the principal. But
yeah, definitely, I would like to get that in there.
But I think it's a good joke. It's never going to get printed. We're never going to be able to print that, unfortunately.
Randy Asher, the principal of my school, refused to speak to me on camera, but he told me off camera that he thought the Holocauster joke was in poor taste. He said that he wouldn't try and stop us from printing it. He just wouldn't give us any money.
I understand why a school might be because there was that whole case earlier in the year too, where this kid dressed up as Hitler for Halloween.
When the Führer says, "Wie ist der Master Race?"
My intention,
right in the Führer's face.
Halloween costume, make some people laugh, get rid of my mustache.
Our first impression was to say no, but we decided to let him go with his artistic freedom.
I didn't think I was going to get through the first period class.
It was Halloween. It wasn't, it was Halloween.
I have no idea if that kid was dressing up as Hitler because he thought Hitler was cool, or if he was dressing up as Hitler because he thought it would be funny. But I do know that in this country, you're not only allowed to dress up as Hitler for Halloween, you're allowed to dress up as a Nazi non-ironically and march in the streets of Jewish neighborhoods if you want to.
It made it more of a joke because people were actually taking it somewhat seriously.
You know what the problem is? The problem is that Jews are afraid of another Holocaust, okay? And they want to nip it in the bud. Anytime it starts, anything anti-Semitic starts brewing, you want to nip it in the bud, quickly get some newspapers articles about it, get the cameras down there, let people know it's still out there. Because it is a kind of, anti-Semitism is kind of accepted in a lot of places, in a lot of ways. But what these defamation leagues and all this shit don't realize is that they're feeding into anti-Semitism by being hypersensitive about everything.
I think that anytime you like withhold information, it's a really bad idea.
It's trying to anticipate other people's fears. That's the problem with censorship.
I feel like what happens when someone makes some inflammatory or perceived inflammatory remark, you all you do is deal with the remark and you don't deal with what it means, and it's like putting a Band-Aid on like a 3rd-degree burn. Like you don't see it anymore, but that burn's still gonna fester and boil over, you know?
There'll be other times where as a performer you get censored on television. For instance, here's another example. I do another joke about growing up in Washington, D.C., going to D.C. public schools, the only school system with White History Month. And there was it was the Tonight Show. It was the Tonight Show. So I was supposed to do the Tonight Show. They're like, look, that joke's gonna be offensive and people don't understand it. I'm like, what do you mean people don't understand it? I couldn't talk about IKEA because IKEA, I think, is a sponsor. I had to take out the word retard and put in another word. And I think the word was paralyzed or something. It was horrible. It was like it was an even more offensive word in my eyes.
I don't think there's any subject that is too serious to be addressed by humor, because I think the humor's purpose is to address serious things.
Humor keeps tragedy from having the last word.
When it comes to like what's offensive and what's not offensive in humor, it's really just like how uptight the person listening to it is. Because like I think the ideal thing would be that everybody should be open to like ridiculing everything, because nothing is perfect and you can find humor in anything. And if you're gonna be offended by something, you should think about it, more than once.
Would you be willing to tell the thing to a survivor?
Directly, like to their face? No.
Oh, if Sunday you're free, why don't you come with me and we'll poison the pigeons in the park? And maybe we'll do in a squirrel or two while we're poisoning pigeons in the park. We'll murder them all amid laughter and merriment, except for the few we take home to experiment.
Yeah, I would say keep ranting and, enjoy having just a few people hate you.
My pulse will be quickening with each drop of strychnine we feed to a pigeon. It just takes a smidgen to poison a pigeon in the park.